you thinking about renting a car when you come to visit Italy?
Or should you rent a car if you're coming to Italy for a visit?
If you're thinking about it, then listen to our tips before you rent a car when you're visiting Italy.
The first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I really need to rent a car? Because if you're staying in big cities, you may not.
If you are only staying in Rome or Milan or Venice, you have public transportation, and all those cities are connected by train. So if you're planning on just staying in those cities, then you really don't need a car. Now, if you do go and the route of renting a car, then you will have to deal with finding parking or renting. Let's say you're renting an Airbnb, then you will have to make sure that that Airbnb has parking and things like that. And it could get more expensive. But if you don't, then you have the option of public transportation or, walking. Those cities are pretty walkable. Now, let's say you do want to visit the countryside or mountains or things like that in Italy. For example, in Tuscany, that is very famous.
You're going to need a car because public transportation, though it does exist, won't be practical for you and your timeline.
And that's because you will have a bus or a train, but they're not coming very often.
Yeah, you might go to a town that only has bus service twice a day.
And you might have to end up, even if you get close to a town, you might have to get off and walk a certain distance. And in some cases, you might not even have a sidewalk. So in those cases, you will need a car. Now, let's say you do that route and you're renting a car. What do you need? First thing, of course, a valid driver license. Make sure your driver license is not expired or will not expire within, the time frame that you are here. Because if you do get pulled over, you will get a huge fine.
Another document that you will need to have with you is an international driving permit. You can get these from AAA back in the States, and basically it's just a translated document of your driver's license. I've never been asked by a rental company for it. They can. And also, when you get pulled over by the police, they may ask for that document as well. And if you don't have it, it could mean additional fines.
The second thing you need to be aware is that most cars in Italy are standard manual, okay? So in the States, the majority are automatic. Here, the majority are standard. So if you do not know how to drive standard, make sure that you do a reservation ahead of time with your rental company, because you will end up getting a standard car if you don't.
Correct. Automatically, the default car they're going to give you is going to be a standard. You need to make sure that you make a reservation for an automatic. Also, if you want a minivan or something bigger, remember the cars here in Europe are smaller than the ones you're used to in the United States.
Yes.
And not every rental agency has a minivan or a bigger vehicle if you have a large family. So again, those are things you need to make reservations in advance for to make sure they have what you need. So when you rent a vehicle, when it comes to insurance, you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to insure it with your credit card? I know sometimes when you rent a car and you get a platinum Visa or whatever that covers the insurance on the vehicle if anything were to happen. Or are you going to buy insurance from the actual agency or from a third party when you make the booking, like on booking.com or Priceline, one of those services? You have to be aware that if you don't get insurance from the agency that you're renting the car from, they could demand a deposit be charged to your credit card, and then you get a refund at the end of that. Me personally, I shop around I rent a vehicle and I look for the best prices on insurance as well, because I like the peace of mind knowing I'm covered if anything were to happen. Remember, you're in Italy. Even parking can be dangerous here at times. People can dent your vehicle or even bump your vehicle when they're parking. So you need to keep that in mind, that you have to think that you are going to have scratches and dents on your vehicle.
The next thing you need to be aware is the difference in rules. In the States, it's automatically, you see a red light, you're in the corner, nobody's coming, you turn right, no problem. Here in Italy, it's prohibited, so you can get in trouble for that, okay? Also, the actual traffic signs are different. So there are certain signs that you need to know. For example, the no stopping or no parking sign is completely different than the ones in the States. You need to at least brush up on those before you get into the road here in Italy. And you can look at some of the traffic signs differences online. You're just Googling them. Another thing, roundabouts. This country is full of roundabouts, and you will see them throughout Europe. And in the States, they are becoming a little bit more common, but we still have a lot more traffic lights in the States. Brush up on roundabouts because you cannot be timid when it comes to entering one and exiting and things like that.
So let's talk about navigation. If you plan on relying on your cell phone for navigation, you have to be aware that if you plan on going in the countryside, you may not have cell service. So you might want to download maps offline, like through Google Map, so at least it's a backup if you need it. Or think about purchasing navigational service when you rent your vehicle.
Another thing you need to be aware are the ZTL zones, or Zona Traffico Limitato. And these are limited traffic zones that are usually in the center of the towns. So you have to make sure that you find parking outside the city or on the outskirts. So you will have to walk in the city or find public transportation to get you to the city center. And you might not even see these signs. And you will get home and you will get a ticket in the mail.
When it comes to parking, like say in Florence, you may find yourself parking in a large parking lot on the outskirts of town and then taking a tram into the city center. Quite common, a lot of people will do it, and it's very affordable.
Be aware of speed cameras. They're usually orange boxes on the side of the road, and you will see a sign announcing them, but you might miss it, and they will take a picture of your license plate, and you will get a ticket in the mail at home. Now, besides the ticket that you get from the city where you got the speeding ticket, you will also get an additional fine from your rental company. It happened to us. So, make sure that you are aware of the speeding cameras.
Something that a lot of people don't realize is that Italy is loaded with toll roads. They're everywhere. There's no getting away from it. And it can get expensive. We took a trip from Lucca to Torino and we spent almost 36 euros in tolls. So it's something you have to plan for. Also, remember, gas here is not sold by the gallon, it's sold by the liter, and it can get expensive, more so than what you're used to paying in the United States.
The last thing you need to be aware is the actual roads. If you're going to the countryside or up in a mountain, the roads are very narrow and they're two-way. So you might not be used to driving in those conditions, so you have to be aware of, what to expect. And we want to say that you cannot be timid when you drive here in Italy.
You got to be a little bit forceful if you want to get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is some of the things you need to think about if you're going to rent a car, because it could turn your vacation from peaceful and relaxing into very stressful. So think long and hard about it. I can tell you that I prefer not to rent a car and use public transportation if I can do it.
One solution for that would be, let's say you are in Tuscany and you decide to go to a vineyard. There are car services that you can hire and they can take you, back and forth from places, and you don't have to actually rent a car or drive.
Yeah, so there are workarounds if you don't want to rent a car.
Okay. Now, all these tips are for people who are visiting, okay? If you are actually moving to Italy, living in Italy, then that's a different story altogether, and you can check out here in this video what it takes to get a driver license.